Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 22nd chapter. Once more Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, 'Tell those who have been invited, look, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.' But they made light of it and went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, maltreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his slaves, 'The wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet.' Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, so the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came to see the guests, he noticed a man there who was not wearing a wedding robe, and he said to him, 'Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?' And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. Jesus spoke these words at the beginning of today's parable to the chief priests and the Pharisees. They had confronted Jesus, demanding to know by whose authority he taught and by what right he dared to pronounce the forgiveness of sin. Well, Jesus responds with a series of parables. Each parable speaks of God's beautiful invitation to share in the joy of the kingdom, that kingdom that Jesus himself, by his very presence, was ushering in. And yet each parable also pronounces judgment on they who would reject the invitation, an uncomfortable motif that we find in the parables of Matthew's gospel. "Come, share in my joy," says the king. It's an invitation akin to being invited to a royal wedding. "No thanks," some say, making light of it. Others are downright offended at the invite. Their answer reinforced with obscene behavior. They take the bearers of the good news, the bearers of the invitation, those messengers, and they seize them, they torture them, and even kill them. Well, now why? Why did these people either ignore or violently reject the invitation, dismissing the good news of the king's favor? Well, I've got two possible answers for you. The first will seem kind of strange. The good news of this gracious invitation didn't sound to them like good news. Basically, they're afraid. The invitation threatened the status quo of their lives. These people had found a way to live in the land of the king without really having a relationship with the king. No relationship, no expectations. No relationship, no demands. They had found a way to manage a nice little existence, a comfortable lifestyle. It all felt so safe and predictable. Why rock the boat? Having this social kind of relationship with the king would most definitely change their lives. It would require something more of them, at the very least a wedding gift, and at the very most, who knows. It's just easier to go along with the status quo. You know, don't we do the same thing when it comes to our faith life in God, or even the work of the church? I mean, we go along with the status quo, with the way things have been. But the status quo and faith cannot coexist, because what characterized Jesus most was that he was always upsetting the status quo. Jesus stayed at the wrong houses, the houses of sinners. He hung around the wrong people, tax collectors, prostitutes, lepers, adulterers, and he healed people on the wrong day, the Sabbath. Well, the Pharisees wanted Jesus to comply with the status quo of that day. His truth should be the same truth that they had spent centuries taming. But when Jesus is present, everyone is uncomfortable, because people want a nice, tame Jesus. And when religion becomes part of the status quo, it becomes dead, lifeless, and useless. You know, we've learned this over and over again as God's Spirit has blown through this new faith community, calling us to a great adventure around the corner of which we cannot see. How often we've had to adjust or adapt or change to become something new to accommodate what God is calling us to become. A status quo church makes for boring ministry and dullness of faith. Instead, God is making us resilient and flexible and creative. Now, interestingly, we've become a rather traditional congregation, a rather traditional church, don't you think? But while we may appear to be traditional, I hope we are never conventional. Meaning that, wow, what we do here looks like church, it feels like church, it acts like church. Hopefully, we are always in the process of reimagining church. For this Jesus in whom we believe will never let us stay the same. And that newness, if we don't see the invitation of it as annoying or threatening, becomes the very means by which we experience the deepest beauty of this work we not only do together, but the way our lives stay excitingly unpredictable. It's the same invitation of the King in the gospel lesson. Come, share in my joy. Well, there's one other reason, I think, as to why the people in the gospel lesson rejected the invitation. They had forgotten how to dance. Numbed to life, stunted by mediocrity, the people had forgotten how to dance, how to sing, how to laugh. And that's what happens when one lives apart from the King. They couldn't go to the banquet because they no longer knew how to party or even the value of a good party. And that's why Jesus said to the very religious folk of his day, I have come that you might have life. And I want to teach you how to dance again, how to sing again, how to laugh again. You know, it's no wonder they thought of Jesus as downright dangerous. But he just wanted to create new life in dead people. But here's the problem. Before Jesus creates new life, he first destroys the old. So you see, that's where the unfashionable chap at the end of the parable comes in. Remember, he didn't even belong at the wedding banquet in the first place. He wasn't on the original guest list. And the lesson refers to him literally as a street person. But because the original guest refused to come, the king had invited him and several others like him. Well, all of the guests have changed their clothes, more than likely wearing wedding robes provided by the king. This man had simply refused to put one on. He disgraces himself and dishonors the host. He couldn't bear to let go of the old so that the new could take its place. Oh, how many of us want God to clothe us in new fullness of life. But we say to God, just put it on over my old clothes. The old clothes feel so comfortable. We want to hang on to them. Give me the new life, oh God, without asking me to let go of the old life. We can never recover our dancing ability with the same old two left feet. And so let me ask you this question. When's the last time that you danced? Especially in a world where the music we dance to is so muffled by noise of anxiety, uncertainty, hate, and violence. How does one dance when it's hard to hear the music? And then the longer we don't dance, the easier it is to forget how. We need someone to remind us that it's kind of like riding a bike. The ability never goes away. Well, perhaps we just need to have the volume of the music turned up a bit so we can catch the beat of it again, so we can tune into the rhythm again in order to remind ourselves that when it comes to life and when it comes to the work of the church, that we are really very good at it. We know how to dance. We've known it all along. Perhaps we've just forgotten. The King calls us to the party. The King calls us to the dance floor. We are called to party. Perhaps we've forgotten how to do that as well. My dear friends, in your last trimester of life, make sure you get out on the dance floor. God says, come to the banquet. I'm throwing a party in honor of my Son, and I want you there as a sign of a new life that I am creating within you. Come, share in my joy. And if that doesn't make you want to dance, then I don't know what will. Amen.